Hello, everyone, and welcome to this radcast of Guy, Fawkes, and Jamen. I'm joined by Guy McPherson, who's back in Belize. How you doing there, Guy?
Good, Jamen. Thank you. It's wonderful to be back. As much as I enjoy touring, as much as I enjoyed spending time in Washington State with you, as the expression goes, there's no place like home, especially when the home is as laid back and comfortable now for me as my home in Western Belize.
And I'm here in rainy Seattle. I'll be heading up to the San Juan Islands later today. Also, prior to our state of Washington tour, you had a week in Missouri, and then prior to that, a week in California, where we were touring together as well. So in all this time, we've really gotten our hands on the pulse of the revolution that's brewing, and that is so imminent, and with so many drivers. And so anyway, Guy, I'd love to invite you to just kind of lead us in a conversation on your perspectives on the building revolution, what it's going to take to spark it, where it's going to go, how it can be orchestrated, if it can be orchestrated, et cetera, et cetera.
I've been thinking for 10 years that we're on the cusp. And during the 10 years, I see continuing to grind the living planet into dust. Tragic though it is, tools at our disposal. We have this technology. We have the ability to connect with each other to a far greater extent than we could 10 years ago. Yet it seems that the revolution toward good, pursuit of the common good, is slipping further and further from our grasp. And it's difficult for me to rationalize what's going, or to figure out what's going on in my mind. To the overwhelming good I see in essentially all people, and contrast that with the overwhelming pursuit of power and money at the expense of the living planet, and ultimately at our own expense, because we depend upon a living planet for our own survival, obviously, and everybody who thinks about it for more than about 5 seconds recognizes that. And yet we seem so willing collectively to cut in and fish out every last salmon, and again grind the living planet into dust at our own expense ultimately. So it's difficult for me to put together the obvious paradox between how we feel and what we want the world to look like. Individual actions leading to collective action that seems exactly contrary, exactly the opposite of what we all claim to want as individuals. It's not too hard to figure out what we need, and then it's a relatively short step to what we want. We need food and water and air to breathe, and most of us need some semblance of human communities. Very few people on the planet who can get along without others in their lives, and that perhaps provides the threshold between need and want. I don't think very many people could survive, and I don't think very many people would want to survive in the absence of human community. So we have these shared values within a culture of, at the same time, insanity and appreciation for the living planet and all it has brought us. So the paradox boggles my mind. Where's the revolution? Where are the roots of the revolution? I suspect they're in that paradox. I suspect they're in that paradox between our ability and apparent willingness to transform the living planet into pavement and concrete and sticks and food, somewhere between there and our love of the living planet, our love of each other, at that nexus lies the revolution. I don't know how it grows out of that. I've been trying to plant those seeds and water the seedlings for more than a decade now. When does it start? Where does it start? How does it start? I'm not sure. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so building off of your excellent, what you just said there, Guy, the paradox. So I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that our individual actions are leading to collective action. And the way I see it is more that our individual actions lead to a collective impact, which may have the appearance at some levels of being a collective action, but is really the sum total of a bunch of individual actions. When a bunch of individuals chop down trees and build their own respective houses, right, those are individual actions which have, when you now look at the world from space, it's just devastated. And that's the sum total of all those individual actions. And the key to that I see is that those individual actions are guided by individual intelligence, right? How many times have you had the experience, you've got some big problem, you're really stressed out about it, maybe you've got a conflict with another person, whatever, but just things are not working out, and you're sitting there and you're thinking, you come up with a solution based on your individual intelligence. And in your heart, you're not quite feeling great about it, but you're feeling so scared and so cornered that this is what you want to do. And then by fortune, by fate, by divine intervention, by whatever means, you're suddenly talking with some people about this. Could be a very close friend or relative or a group of them. And they give you perspectives and new possibilities. And you're like, oh my God, whew. I'm sure glad I didn't go down that path that I thought of when I was thinking on my own, right? So I think therein lies the key, both to the paradox and to the revolution, which is that we recognize, we as individuals come to recognize that individual intelligence is not getting us to a collective place that we want to be. Right? Each of us is using our individual intelligence to take individual actions, which, integrate over all 7.37 billion of us, and the net impact is just death, giant planetary death. And so, therefore, why don't we try a new level of thinking? And just as I've got here on these little handouts, a new level of thinking, right? Einstein's quote, "We cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. Hence, a new level of thinking is needed." So I would say that the revolution can start in creating collective intelligence and this new level of thinking that helps us get away from these individual actions, which right now are status quo, but which can radically transform in an instant when we get together and start thinking collectively and then determining collective actions as well as individual actions, but emanating out of collective intelligence rather than this individual intelligence, which is leading us straight to death. Back to you, Guy.
Yeah, and we've seen a few examples of that collective intelligence, and actually exhibited a few examples in our recent meetings together. At what point and by what spark do we get the masses together? At what point and with what spark do we overthrow the existing paradigm, the infinite growth paradigm, as Michael C. Rupert called it? At what point and with what spark do we point out to people that their comfort is false, that their sense of security is actually a false sense of security, and it teeters on the brink? So these are the questions I have. These are the things that keep me awake at night. What, when, why, how, who is willing, who is able to partake in the revolution to save the living planet if not for our own species, then for the sake of doing the right thing on behalf of the planet that has ensured the survival, the existence, the persistence of us all. Those are my questions. I don't have any answers. I haven't had answers for a long time. I've become comfortable with my ignorance, in fact, on these and so many other topics.
Well, paradoxically, Guy, I think that the answer is right in front of us, and I'm totally serious about that. And that as I was listening to what you were saying, I was imagining myself being a viewer of this video after it's been edited and published. Hello, world. And that, you know, just listening to what you're saying, I'm just like, holy crap, he's absolutely right. Viva la revolucion. And because you have such a great audience, Guy, that you can share this with through your channels, and I can likewise share it with my audience, which is much smaller. But through us sharing this co-creative product of Guy Fawkes and Jamen as a weekly thing, I can't see this going anywhere but viral, because where else do we see people leading a planetary revolution and saying, you know, join us? Right. Well, now that I pose the question, I can think of a few examples, but none that are focused on a whole world. Well, actually, now that I say that, there are a bunch of organizations that say, "Hey, join us and let's build a whole world together. We're doing this. We're doing that. We're doing this." From Save the Whales to Save the Rhino. And how are these programs working out? Disastrously, because they have a myopic focus, right? Most of them. Or they have a broader focus, like End World Hunger or something like that, that's planetary, but is equally disastrous in the net results. And that's because we're not looking at it holistically. So I see the revolution as one where, and the key is to people finally joining. At what point? The point is now, as soon as we publish this stuff and start to push it out there with what spark with these very videos. This is the spark that I believe will inspire people to join us and say, hey, I want in, I want to participate in the conversation. I want to participate in the radical collective intelligence, which moves us towards a definite aim that is a whole world. Back to you, Guy.
I love that you brought up world hunger and its solution. It seems to me that the solution to world hunger is to create more hunger. That seems counterintuitive, so I'll explain. How do we solve world hunger? By growing more food. What does growing more food do? It facilitates overshoot. It facilitates the bringing of more people onto this planet. So if we're going to take it truly radical, we have to deal with radical solutions. And I'm not sure that providing more food for a burgeoning population is a radical approach. And we certainly have a burgeoning and ever-growing population on planet Earth. We add more than 200,000 people a day to the planet. That's births minus deaths. It's more than 300,000 births per day. So there are all these interconnected issues that need to be well dealt with holistically and radically. And among them is the overpopulation, the overabundance of humans on the planet. We can't all have everything if there's 7.5 billion of us, much less the 8 billion or the 9 billion nations claim we're headed toward. There's just no one here to there with the kinds of approaches we're currently employing. So I'm not sure how to get from here to there, except that I know it must be holistic, it must be radical, it must take into account the number and lifestyles of the people on the planet. It must take into account what we eat and where we live, how we live. That's a lot. I can't do
Absolutely.
that. You can't do that. No 20 of us can do that. And that's why the revolution is required. So very many people.
Exactly. Exactly. No, you're hitting the nail on the head, guy. Exactly what you said about hunger. Because I used to look at hunger more myopically. Okay, you know, how do we optimize the production of food and blah, 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 so that we end world hunger holistically. But even my holistic scope was bounded by basically, you know, holistically in terms of healing land, ecosystems, reversing desertification, and you know, I was thinking, you know, well, with ending hunger, that's the first key step towards ending poverty, and ending poverty in all of its senses is the key to ending overpopulation. But that may not be radical enough. And so anyway, I'm just admitting my own myopic scope at which I've looked at things. The scope is there's no way I can even put any words together to define how big the scope is. It's basically infinite. And so that's why we need structures like as we're developing for radical collective intelligence to accommodate this infinite scope and constantly growing scope, because in terms of the holistic, nothing is off the table by definition. We look at everything. We look at the economy. We seek to transform, I should say, everything. We seek to transform not just the economy, but the very mode of production itself. What is the economy for? What is the objective? Is the objective individual hoarding? Well, that's the mode of production that we have had. And, you know, with all different flavors and variations and tweaks, but let's call a spade a spade. The ultimate objective of the global economy, of the mode of production, is to maximize individual hoarding without limit. Hundreds of billions of dollars, sure. Trillions of dollars, sure. Fair game, right? And that's actually extolled as a virtue of sorts. And so in terms of the holistic scope, the infinite scope, it seeks to transform the economy, the mode of production, human culture, our entire set of living arrangements, which is the mashup of the economy and culture, and on and on and on. The very story of humanity. Why are we here? The very nature of humanity, as going from a collective of individuals to a collective, not just a collective intelligence, but a collective heart, a collective being, right? Parallel to the Cambrian explosion, where we're finally bringing people together. I want to go to kind of more rapid back and forth, because the back and forth, the conversation is the collective intelligence. So back to you, and let's just play ping pong here.
And again, I have, and I suspect you have too, more questions than answers. And so furthering this conversation has to be stage one of the mission. Unfortunately, we should be, if we're to take collective actions, plural, that would get us out of the boiling pot and back onto safe ground, then we need to be at more than the point of starting a conversation. We need to be well into the point of, to quote from Chris Hedges' latest book, not his latest book, but a recent book, Days of Destruction, Days of Revolt. We've been destroying long enough. We have destroyed pretty much every aspect of the living planet, and what's left appears to be our goal. We have destroyed a sense of global community, and here I'm not pointing fingers at you and me or anybody else. I'm describing the outcome of industrial civilization, of a set of living arrangements that reinforces sociopathy, rewards sociopathy, and leads predictably to and the demise of our entire species. What's next? Where do we go? Are we on to the revolt stage yet? Are we up to the revolution? Are we willing to pay the price required for a revolution? Are we the revolutionaries we think we are? And if so, how do we add of that information, light of that question, in light of what is at rest here, which is everything? How do we act?
Awesome, guy. I say, well, the moment, if not now, when? I mean, we could be weeks away from an ice-free Arctic, certainly months away, and the consequences of that are unimaginable to me, but there's no question that they will be absolutely devastating. Any informed scientist who would assert anything to the contrary, I would love to have on this show so that we can interview them to get their perspective. Because, and anyway, bottom line, if we don't do this now, when? The planet is dying. So I say that the revolt that we put it to people as red pill, blue pill, and I'll be actually out in public in a number of days with the red pill, blue pill choice. So let's just define what the choice is that we're offering to people. We're offering, here's a bifurcation, right? You don't have to buy into the bifurcation, but here it is, right? It's an invitation to participate in the bifurcation. Blue pill is continued illusion, right? Just pretend it's all okay, right? I used to have a thing outside my door at Microsoft. It was one of those, patriotic, ribbons, red, white, and blue, the American flag. But I had on the ribbon, instead of support the troops or whatever, just pretend it's all okay, because that's going to be the underlying philosophy behind this pro-war attitude, pro-expansion, etc. And so the blue pill can be just pretend it's all okay, right? As long as you hoard, look, the more you hoard for yourself, the better off you will be, and to hell with other people and to hell with the planet, right? And because God intended for you to have dominion, not just over the planet, but over other people. So, be kind of sarcastic about it, but be clear, this is what the blue pill, and then the red pill is for revolution, for radical transformation starting right now. And it's one or the other. That's the bifurcation, right? There's no middle ground, right? There's no, I'm going to be a good armchair liberal. Being a good armchair liberal, sorry, that's a blue pill, right? It's time for radical action and collective action and collective intelligence. So the very action, for example, of joining radish.org is a radical action, a radical step. And then participating in these conversations is a radical step, because we're reaching out and we're calling it for what it is, revolution, to overthrow the current tyranny, the current empire, which is an empire of destruction, a Death Star. And I think Darth Vader is a good symbolism for that. So it'll be Darth Vader handing out red pill or blue pill, choose. Back to you, guys.
Yeah, you bring to mind a line from Daniel Dennett. There is no polite way to tell people they've committed their lives to an illusion. And that's where we are. That illusion is the blue pill that people have been taking their entire lives. The illusion that we can maintain an unsustainable set of living arrangements indefinitely. The illusion that we can have infinite growth on a finite planet, the entire infinite growth paradigm that we were all born into and that we bought into with every purchase we made. The whole idea that we can sustain the unsustainable indefinitely is, of course, ridiculous. You brought up an ice-free Arctic, predicted by the U.S. Naval Postgraduate College to occur in 2016, plus or minus 3 years. Well, I'd say we dodged 4 bullets so far. All the evidence indicates to me that we're headed for an ice-free Arctic this summer, meaning this August or September. It's the most fragile the ice has ever been during the reign of humans on the planet. The Arctic is the planetary air conditioner. What stays in the what happens in the Arctic, unlike Vegas, does not stay in the Arctic. The Arctic and its lack of ice, and its profusion of methane, will have, already is having, and will continue to have planetary impacts. To claim otherwise is to continue popping those blue pills. That's not where we're going here. That's not what we're interested in doing. We're interested in a lot more radical approach than is currently being pursued by almost everybody around us. The time for revolution is now. The time for destruction is behind us.
Beautiful, beautiful guy. Absolutely. And, I would add to that with the Arctic, we have a double whammy with the Arctic. Imagine getting punched in the side of the head by Muhammad Ali at his prime when your head is 2 inches from a concrete wall, right? The first whack is the losing of the air conditioner, right? Which, you know, keeps the planet cool during the summer, helps regulate these global climatic and oceanographic and hydrologic systems and patterns in ways that we don't even understand, right? We're like the kid in Texas who just destroys the air conditioner, not understanding that that's what's keeping him comfortable, and because it's just the next cool toy to destroy. And so what's needed is radical action, first to form the collective intelligence to figure out what to do. And then the second stage is to do that which the collective intelligence determines is optimally prudent to do right now. And we've talked about geoshading of various kinds. We've talked about various ways of preserving the Arctic ice, right? Using, drumroll, don't all shoot me at once, technology, you know. And the thing is, when we've used technology to get into a really bloody high-speed car wreck on the interstate, guess what? It might help to use a little technology to save our lives, whether it's artificial breathing, stuff to stop the bleeding artificially, whatever. I mean, I think we're going to need to use some of the master's tools to undo the master's house of destruction, the master's Death Star. We're using the master's tools to dismantle the master's Death Star. And that's the final scene of Star Wars Episodes 4, A New Hope, the original Star Wars that came out in the 70s. So, and I love that you said there's not a polite way to tell people that their life is an illusion, because this is the wake-up call. Your entire life up till now has been a grand illusion. If you're not part of the revolution right now as we speak, it's because you are, at least in part, and perhaps in large part, larger than any of us cares to acknowledge, living in an illusion, a delusion. And it's time to wake up. So red pill, blue pill, delivered by Darth Vader, you know, the face of death itself. It's like, dude, if you don't choose, I'm just going to keep on my way. I'm going to keep destroying, right? In fact, that could be the middle flyer with no pill attached, or a transparent pill I'm not ready to choose, right? Well, if you're sitting there as an armchair liberal not ready to choose, the path of destruction is you know, there's so much momentum in the direction of destruction. Anyway, I'm rambling, so I'm going to go back to you guys. Thanks.
Well, the call for a revolution seems like a good place to stop this episode. Perhaps we should wrap up and look forward to being joined by Fawkes in our next episode. Fawkes is on the road today and unable to join us, at least for now. But certainly we've put out the call. The consequences are clear. If we continue down this destructive path known as business as usual, we'll end up where, if it's not already too late, it certainly is close. The time for revolution is here. What's at stake? Everything. I'm reminded of the scene in, I think it was No Country for Old Men, and the star comes into a remote convenience store with a gas station, and he tells the nervous man behind the counter, as he flips a coin, he tells him to call it. And the guy says, "What are we flipping for?" And the bad guy in the film says, "Everything." Well, that's what we're flipping for. Everything. Join the cause.
Well said, Guy. Thank you. Thank you, Guy, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of Guy, Fawkes, and Jamen.